Hello people, my name is Rage, and welcome one and all to War for the Overworld. Let us find out if it is worth your time. The short answer is just a little bit I wanted to insert here. I have been playing the game since making this video for quite a few more days, and while I touch upon both these things in the video, I really wanted to stress them now that I've got more experience with the game, in terms of just playing it for a long time. There are quite a few rough, unfinished feeling things, as well as some bugs. Now, they are working on all of them, however, it's a little bit bad for a game that has been in development through Kickstarter to early access to alpha to beta over 2 years to then get released with these problems, and it does suck. I love Dungeon Keeper, I love that this game exists, and I still maintain what is here is still really good, and none of the bugs or unfinishedness actually affects things negatively to the point that you couldn't look past it or indeed play the game, but I can't in good conscience just not really stress it. And I do talk about it in the video, as I said, but I just wanted to make you guys aware. So I shall return you now to the video. Yes, if you are a Dungeon Keeper fan, and mostly yes if you're not, and have the ability to look past a few kind of off things in an otherwise stellar strategy base building experience. So let us hop into a skirmish. This is basically your random map, I just want to fight a computer, it doesn't matter, I just want to kind of play the game mode, basically for practice, honestly. I imagine this will be the least played mode out of the other options. So first and foremost, you do notice something straight away. It's my main problem with the game. Firstly, let me just say, I love Dungeon Keeper. It is one of my favorite games of all time, and this being a spiritual successor / revival that I have followed from Kickstarter for over 2 years is wonderful for me, and I am you know, maybe a little bit biased towards it, but I am still going to be very, very fair, or at least attempt to within the evilness allowed to an underlord, which is what you are known as within the world of the game. So, my main problem is that there seems to be a kind of lack of polish everywhere, and it's just little things like this. To me, this looks like the kind of UI that I had in uni when I was making games, and that shouldn't be a thing. Now, you know what I'm saying? It just shouldn't look kind of, I don't want to say it, but amateurish. Most of what's here looks good. The assets look good, if not a little bit rough around the edges, but that's easily forgiven because of the perspective. But just stuff like the menu UI there, a fair amount of it is just kind of rough around the edges, really rough, and that kind of is throughout the game. However, that is my only real negative. For the most part, everything that is here is both true to the original, but also improved and fantastic for a more modern market. A much more modern market. It was like 10 years ago, Dungeon Keeper. In fact, a lot more than 10 years ago. So there you have it. So what is it all about? Well, as I said, it is a base building strategy kind of lair game that flips the usual dichotomy of evil and good on its head. You are the evil underlord, master of your dungeon. You are to summon hordes of beasts and demons and all manner of vile creature into your dungeon, tell them what to do, and use them to vanquish the forces of good. And I've always liked that about the series, and it is very much maintained. The strategy elements are glorious, the base building works really well, and everything you expect is really just there. So as you can see, this is my dungeon heart, also known as your dungeon core. If this gets destroyed, you are out the game. You are obviously trying to destroy your opponent's core and knock them out the game. There are various different core shapes and styles depending on who you play as. As you can see, I've got this kind of stony one, but the normal one is kind of an archway towards a middle center mana bomb thing doesn't really explain a lot, I realize. So you've been seeing me kind of dig out rooms and stuff, so that's what you do. You start with your worker imps, and they basically scurry around the place and do whatever you tell them, and if they don't do it, well, the best feature of the game comes to play, because you can slap them repeatedly, which is always deliciously wonderful. So now that we have a room here, what do you do? Well, this is where the base building planning comes into play, because you have various different rooms that you can build into your dungeon, and various different rooms do obviously various different things. So let us start then with the lair. What the lair is a home to all of the creatures that you summon into your dungeon. They will come here, make themselves a base, and then become your loyal servants. The slaughter pen is a room designed to summon little piglets that your servants will go into and devour in order to stay nourished. So yes, you very much have to look actually after your servants, care for their needs. Say some of your servants like gambling, you build them a casino. At least that was a thing in the original, and that kind of vein. Keep them happy, keep them fed, keep them trained, keep them well slept, and they will be as fit a fighting machine as you can hope for. So this right here is an underworld gateway, and this is what you need to capture in order to summon forth your creatures. They spew from this portal, and that's where you acquire your units from. And how do you get the units? Well, this is the bit that I've always liked about the game. Every room will attract a different type of creature. So say you build a torture chamber, that will attract a mistress of pain, a kind of succubus demon, because she's all about that torture. Say you build a barracks, you will start to attract goblin/orky type enemies who just love a good scrap. That is how it works, and it's all about building the right balance of buildings in the right place until you have a dungeon that you are of course really happy with. So what I'm going to do over here is build a slaughter pen. Now rooms work in a kind of 3x3. Everything needs to have at least 3x3 in order to work. If this had been smaller, I wouldn't have generated the actual slaughter pen in the middle, and it would be a useless room. So you do really have to plan your space, and that's one of the fantastic things about it. I'm going to build more layers surrounding the portal just to save a few people the trip, and then complete this layer over here. So that's really the gist of the game, honestly, and it's very enthralling, and you do find yourself getting very, very into it. Now this gold that has just been left on the floor, there is no space in my dungeon here for storage for the gold. Everything is full, so I can pick it up myself and just drop it to a safer place for now. And you can do this with your minions as well. If I just pick up some of these imps, I'm now just casually holding them. Though this is where another kind of problem I have with the game lies. There seems to be a distinct lack of attention to detail that the game 15 years ago had. A best example I can give you for this is that if I pick up an imp here, in the original game, I would literally be holding him by the scruff of his neck, and he would be dangling as if I had legitimately picked him up off the ground, whereas now he's just kind of stood there in idle animation, kind of near my finger, and little touches like that, I don't understand why they're not present. It kind of loses its soul a little for someone like me who has played the original Dungeon Keeper. For you guys who are looking to get into this for the first time, I doubt it will bother you too much, though you may be looking at it thinking, that doesn't really look like I've actually picked that dude up, and then when you drop them, they just appear on the floor, whereas in the old game, when you dropped them, they actually fell from the sky, landed, had to slowly get up, and then do whatever you wanted to do. So just little things like that I have noticed as an ex-Dungeon Keeper player. But if you are not an ex-Dungeon Keeper player, I don't think you'll be too bothered, so it's not the end of the world. There are also a few little bugs in the game. However, during making this video, at least not the one you're watching right now, but a video on this game, there was a patch to update it and fix some bugs. So the developers really are on it. They have got the great attitude for this game. There is already free DLC planned, and they are trying their best to make it work, and I do applaud them for that. They are really doing the best job that they can, but still, it's been 2 years in development, and having bugs and things like prop slaughter pen still be in the game, at this stage, you know, hunger_raw is kind of a little bit sloppy, which ties into the kind of lack of polish I was talking about. So that's really where I stand on that front, and those two things are really the only main negatives, but I really don't want to take away from the fact the game is very, very satisfying. It is wondrously fun to build your lair, be the evil one, attract hordes of darkness, send them through your caverns and caves to the opponent and slaughter their creatures and the forces of good, and it is a very satisfying, awesome experience. It really is. So do not be put off by the few things that are being worked on as I speak by the developers. And I will go over what the campaign is like towards the end, and the campaign is very, very good. So what this is a shrine of gold, which means you can kind of permanently mine it to get little bits of gold. If I turn it off, they will stop doing that. It's not a very fast generation of gold, but it is a very, very dense one, so that's why it's useful. So, how do I get more buildings and things and actual creatures into my dungeon? Well, you go to this. This is basically a talent tree. This starts off fully locked on every game you play, and as you do things and get tiles and excavate, you get this bar filling up as well as over time.
Discovered a ghost in an unearthed shell.
Okay then, I did not expect that randomly, though that does bring me to a very big point. You are always watched over and guided by that guy, who has a wondrous voice, very similar to his original voice, and he is very good. In fact, the whole game is very charming. It has a lovely level of humor, it doesn't take itself too seriously. You may be summoning hordes of darkness, but I mean, they are described as brainless idiots by the game's own unit description, so you're always going to have that kind of light-hearted feel, which is really good because it does complement being a sort of over-dramatically evil underlord dungeon master that you are. So if we return to this, seriously, the game is very charming. It is fun to listen to. The voice acting is good. The storyline is okay, but it is very enjoyable in a kind of bemused smile way, which I really do like. So we spend our points then. Let's unlock the barracks, and let's unlock the archive. Now, one thing that does annoy me is you have to hear him say everything is unlocked every single time you do this, and you may get sick of it. You may do. So now that we've unlocked these two new rooms, let's build them. Let us build ourselves a nice barracks that will cover this, and what this is going to do is attract gnarlings, because they like the barracks. So what is a gnarling? It's a kind of brutish, orcish fighting machine. They're not very powerful, they're good in numbers, they're kind of your base average troop. So if I pick him up, drop him into here, he will start using those to train, and you see the number 1, that is the level of this unit, and that goes up as you fight, and that is all pretty damn good. So in terms of the other building that we unlocked, it is of course the archive. So we're going to make some space for that, and always it is great when you are making space for a new room, because it is very, I know I keep saying it, but there is something about lair building that I absolutely love, and I will defend it to the hills. Evil Genius was fantastic for it as well. So they are going to start working on that. So you do have spells, you also have constructs which do cost gold. This one, for example, I could instantly change a claimed tile into a
Replacement earth complete.
into a stone, as you can see, but I want to instantly get rid of it because I don't actually want that there. So Summon Worker, for example, lets me use my mana to summon extra imp, so everything gets done faster. There is also Alchemy, which are spells for gold, and there are also traps which you can build, and the traps are very, very good indeed. But for now, let us build ourselves the archive, which is going to attract a new type of minion into our dungeon. As you can see, the glowing blackness. Ooh. And now we have a cultist. And again, this is something I want to point out. In the original Dungeon Keeper, when you summoned a minion into your dungeon, it would rise in a cloud of lightning out the portal, hover in the air, and then get thrown forward, whereas now they just teleport and materialize in. and that kind of irks me as someone who is used to how the original game was. It really, really does. But don't get me wrong with my tone. I love that this exists. I am so happy. It feels so much like the original game, and I am going to be playing the hell out of it. But as I said, I really wanted to be fair in this. So let's get the workshop, and I can show you how this does work. We need a good place for our workshop to be, so I am probably going to place it off the side of the lair. You want it a little bit defensive and in the back of your base, because you don't want the enemy messing with your workshop. That really is irritating when that happens. And we also want to increase our vault, because our money is getting a little bit out of control, which, to be fair, is always a good thing. I'm going to switch this back on so we start earning a bit more money as well. You don't always have these, though, so you can't rely on them. A lot of the time you do have to go and find actual gold in the world. Now that we've claimed this room, we are going to turn it into a foundry where we're going to attract a new type of creature. And again, it's always the system of room attracts creature X. You need to plan what creatures you want, plan your base around building those rooms, and make sure you have the correct setup to maximize how you do everything. So we have now got ourselves a weird little runty creature that loves to hammer away in the workshop using its head as a hammer, which is wonderful. So let's get the Blade Lotus trap. And what this lets us do is choose a spot, and it will place a trap which triggers when an enemy walks on it and spikes them to death. But for now, the main thing you want to do is get doors surrounding your dungeon that your guys can move through just like they were not there, but the enemies have to break through. So you want to really make your dungeon as hard to penetrate into and destroy as possible. It's all about the base building. But yeah, it really, really is. So this basically is how you play. You just slowly unlock new rooms, which attract new creatures, which get new spells, new traps, new fancy things for your dungeon, the ability to convert souls into vampires. You get really cool stuff later on. You just build up your evil empire and end up having a massive, expansive dungeon that covers half the map, and then your opponent's done the same, so you have two half the map sized dungeons, and you just go to war with your spells and creatures and trickery and traps, and it's a very wonderful strategy experience, and it's just a lot of fun. It's as fun as Age of Empires was when you clashed armies and bases, yet it's in this context of being an evil person instead of good, and having this underground, carefully constructed, corridored lair, and it's very, very wonderful to play. And there is multiplayer, of course. The UI of it is, again, a little bit kind of ugly, but they are updating that. They have said so that is very good to hear. And you basically just do this, but against another person. If you're in Skype with someone, and you're both playing this game, and you're both building your lairs, and you're like, oh, what are you doing? Oh, I don't know, just building maybe an armory. How about you? Oh, well, I've got myself some succubuses. Haha. And it's very nice to have that backwards and forwards and conquer each other's dungeon. So as you can see, they are building these little boxes, which convert to being the doors, and there we have my doors built. So that's how the trap works. So what I'm going to do now is actually see if I can't explore and find our opponent and actually go to battle and show you how that actually works, because it really is mostly about the base building, and the combat isn't as enthralling to micromanage, but it is really good fun to actually watch. I am going to unlock the Beast Den, which attracts some cool creatures into your dungeon, as well as, I guess we're going to go for the Tavern, because a lot of them do need to drink, and then we're probably going to go Sanctuary, Alchemy Lab, and then the Prison is good because you can capture unconscious enemies, drag them to your prison, and eventually they will either be used for nefarious deeds or die and become skeletons, which is obviously nice. But I'm going to have the Crypt. I have another point anyway, so we'll unlock the Prison as well. So now we have a very large amount of rooms, and you end up being kind of overwhelmed if you don't know what everything does. So you really do need to spend time learning and practicing and getting as good as you can with the game, and that's a really good thing. That should be there in an RTS. You should have that learning factor, you should have that noob phase, that getting better, that efficiency, going into a dungeon, a War for the Overworld game, sorry, knowing exactly what you want to build, the layout of your dungeon for maximum efficiency, find your opponent early maybe, and go aggressive with early game creatures, or maybe kind of defensive it up, get your turtle on, build traps, try and get to the late game creatures, and then fight with a crushing, overwhelmingly strong force that you have secretly trained up. There's a lot of elements that you do have to go through. And the sounds and all the creatures make and everything, it's all very nice, it's funny, and as I said, the battles aren't too serious, they all kind of just wail at each other and they get scared and they run away and a lot of your creatures become cowards, and there's all little nice things going on. Now I am sending my imps here to try their best to find any sort of opponent for us, though they are struggling to get through these superheated rocks, which does kind of suck. So I think, honestly guys, you have definitely seen what you need to see, I think, of how this game goes, and you could just imagine my layer building and building, growing stronger and stronger, and more expansive, more rooms, more creatures, more everything. And at the same time, you can also get the impression that, oh, okay, no, I'm going to do this again, except this time I'm going to build my lair in this way and do this different, and then maybe the time after that I'm going to go for this type of creature and see what happens, and that's a really fun thing to do. It does have that very good replayability factor when it comes to that. So it does look like I can get past over here, which is what I am looking for. I'm building extra rooms here just to accommodate some of the new buildings we did unlock. I'm going to turn this off just to free more workers up, as well as specifically summoning them to go help. And then you can also do one of my favorite spells, and you can possess any given creature in your dungeon and actually operate as them. And it really is cool, this, because if you are part of a battle that is going on while possessed, then you can actually fight and you can swing the tide of the battle, because obviously you're going to do a lot better than the AI would do, and when you're against another person who's both doing that, it does add a really fun little element. So if I'm going to go up to here, and look, I myself can help destroy this, and we have... I may have just accidentally dug into my own area, but I like this view because you get to see what your dungeon is actually like, which is really, really wonderful. So if I leave that, yeah, we've ended up back there. So we seem to be very much hemmed in here, which is kind of upsetting. We do have something over here to go explore, so I'm going to try my best to get to it. And for now, I am going to build a beast den here.
An Oculus has entered your dungeon.
And I am going to build the sanctuary over here. So now we've got two new creatures. We've got the Oculus floating eye beings, and we've got ourselves a sort of spider creature, which is really wonderful, and that's attracted, as you might imagine, from the beast den. And here we go, we have finally found ourselves the enemy dungeon. So what I'm going to do is get a rally flag, whack it here, and then all of my creatures are going to try their best to get to it. But I can obviously help them out by picking up all my creatures and simply dropping them down into the combat, and then we can sort of push our way into the enemy dungeon, as you are seeing here, which is wonderful to do. Though our opponents here have a fairly larger amount of minions than we do, but I can help them by lightning striking anyone who steps on my territory. You can't lightning strike people on enemy territory, so it is very balanced in that respect. But yes, my army got absolutely slaughtered there. My god, I feel sorry for them. That is very awkward. So now the purple team is going to push forward into my base, destroy my heart, and then I would be out. So there you go, that's really all you're getting from the combat in this game. It really is all about the strategy and not so much about the micromanagement of units. I could have possessed one of them, but it wouldn't have really made a massive difference. So yeah, there you go. Payday, by the way, is the day that you pay all your minions for being your minions. So it's just basically a drain on your gold, so you don't ever stop actually getting gold. So there you go, guys. That is very much just how the game actually works. So I'm going to go to the main menu now and show you the campaign. This is where the game really shines, at least for a single player experience. Each one of these that comes up is another campaign level, and you slowly work your way in segments through the human kingdom until you get to the final frontier at the palace and the final boss. There's all scripted stuff that happens, unique stuff, voice acting, it's all very amusing, it's very fun, it teaches you the game really well, and the campaign is a very, very enjoyable single player experience. So it is honestly worth getting just for that, even if you don't want to do random maps or go against multiple people. And this is how the multiplayer lobby looks, and it's really, as you can see, not great. But as I said, they are updating that. So yeah, War for the Overworld, a deliciously evil, awesome, satisfying base building game with a few polish issues, a few bugs, but they are being worked on, and is very satisfying. For me, I think Dungeon Keeper 2 so far was actually better, which worries me because it was like 14 years ago. Longer than that. But objectively speaking, this game is very good, very much has the spirit of Dungeon Keeper, and if it's something you're getting into for the first time, I think you will really, really enjoy it. I love being the evil one, building the evil dungeon, and it's a satisfying experience. So there you go, guys. Mine has been Rage. Remember to like if you enjoyed this, it really does help, and I do appreciate it, and subscribe for more. Goodbye.